We live in a world that celebrates the loudest voice in the room, where speaking up is often mistaken for leadership and constant communication is seen as strength. We measure influence by how much we say, how quickly we respond, and how convincingly we argue. But what if this approach is actually limiting our ability to truly shape outcomes and connect with others? There's an ancient yet deeply relevant idea from Stoic philosophy that offers a different path, one built not on words, but on presence. It's called tactical stillness, and it might just be the most underrated skill for meaningful influence in our noisy modern lives. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote in his Meditations that the nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. This isn't about withdrawing from the world or becoming passive. It's about cultivating a quality of attention and composure that allows you to navigate challenges with clarity and purpose. Tactical stillness is the practice of using silence, observation, and inner calm as tools to shape situations without saying a word. It's the art of influencing through what you don't do, the pause before you respond, the space you hold for others, the calm you maintain when chaos unfolds. Throughout this video, we'll explore key Stoic principles that support this practice: presence, detachment, intentional silence, and emotional resilience. These aren't abstract ideas, they're practical skills you can apply in conversations, negotiations, and moments of tension to create more impact with less effort. We'll look at how Stoics like Epictetus and Seneca used stillness not as avoidance, but as a form of intelligent engagement. So here's a question to carry with you as we begin. What if the most influential thing you can do is sometimes nothing at all? In Stoicism, presence isn't passive, it's an active practice of awareness. This means being fully engaged with the moment, observing everything without feeling compelled to immediately respond or intervene. It's a state of calm attentiveness where you are completely there, mentally and emotionally, yet you are not pulled by every impulse or distraction. The Stoics saw this as a foundational skill for a virtuous life. Epictetus, for instance, constantly reminded his students to focus only on what is within their control, their judgments, desires, and actions, while accepting everything else as it is. This focus is the very heart of tactical stillness. It's not about withdrawing from a situation, it's about engaging with it from a place of inner stability. When you are fully present, you see the situation more clearly. You notice subtle cues, understand underlying dynamics, and perceive opportunities that a reactive mind would completely miss. Your calm becomes a resource, a strategic advantage that allows you to influence events simply by how you hold yourself within them. Consider the work of a skilled negotiator in a high-stakes situation. Their primary tool isn't a clever argument or a threat, it's their unwavering presence. They remain completely focused, listening not just to the words being shouted, but to the fears and needs behind them. By not reacting to provocations, by maintaining a calm demeanor and steady eye contact, they prevent the tension from escalating. Their stillness is contagious. It often compels the other person to lower their voice, to pause, and to begin mirroring that same calm. This is tactical stillness in action, using a composed presence to de-escalate conflict and guide the situation toward a peaceful resolution without a single commanding word. The negotiator's power comes from their ability to control their own internal state, which in turn gives them immense influence over the external environment. They embody the Stoic principle that we may not control the events around us, but we always have sovereignty over our attention and our reactions. This principle is just as powerful in our everyday interactions. Think about a difficult conversation with a family member or a tense meeting at work. How often do we jump in to defend ourselves, to correct someone, or to fill a silence out of our own discomfort? In those moments, we surrender our power, but when you choose presence, you reclaim it. You create a space for something new to emerge. Can you recall a time when you chose to stay fully present instead of reacting? Perhaps you listened patiently while a colleague vented their frustration, and by simply giving them your full attention, you helped them find their own solution. Or maybe you remained quiet during a personal criticism, and in that silence, the other person's anger lost its momentum, allowing for a real dialogue to begin. These are the moments where true influence is born, not from what you said, but from the quality of your presence. It's in that space of non-reaction that we often find the most effective and compassionate way forward. How can we influence situations without being attached to how they turn out? This sounds like a paradox, but it's a core tenet of Stoic wisdom known as cognitive detachment. It isn't about becoming cold, indifferent, or uncaring. True Stoic detachment is about investing your full effort into your actions while simultaneously releasing your tight grip on the specific results. You care deeply about doing the right thing, but you do not allow your emotional state to be held hostage by an outcome you cannot fully control. This creates a profound sense of inner freedom and, somewhat counterintuitively, makes you far more effective in your pursuits. Seneca explored this idea extensively in his letters, often writing about the frustration and disappointment that inevitably follow when our happiness depends on external events. He advised managing our expectations and focusing our energy solely on our intentions and efforts, the things that are genuinely within our power. When you are emotionally entangled in a desired result, your judgment becomes clouded. Fear of failure might make you hesitate. Desperation for a particular outcome can make you push too hard or act manipulatively. Detachment, in the Stoic sense, clears that fog. It allows you to see the situation with objectivity, to assess your options with clarity, and to choose the most virtuous and effective course of action without the distorting noise of your own anxiety or craving. Your influence then comes from a place of calm confidence, not from neediness. A powerful historical example of this principle in action can be seen in the leadership of figures like George Washington during the American Revolution. The war was marked by devastating losses, bitter winters, and constant uncertainty. Washington cared immensely about the cause of independence, yet he repeatedly demonstrated an ability to make clear-headed, strategic decisions without being paralyzed by the potential for defeat. After a significant loss, a reactive leader consumed by attachment might have made a rash decision to salvage pride. But Washington's composure, his stoic detachment from the immediate emotional weight of each setback, allowed him to retreat, regroup, and persist with a long-term strategy. His influence was magnified not by dramatic speeches alone, but by this unwavering, resilient presence that inspired his troops to keep going despite the odds. His focus remained on doing his duty with excellence, not on guaranteeing a victory at every turn. This practice is just as relevant in our daily lives. Consider a project at work where you've done exceptional preparation. You can control the quality of your work, your collaboration with colleagues, and your presentation. But you cannot control the final decision of your manager, the shifting priorities of the company, or a competitor's unexpected idea. If you are attached to getting sole credit or to the project being approved exactly as you envisioned, you set yourself up for frustration. You might become defensive in meetings, resistant to feedback, or despondent if things don't go your way. However, if you practice cognitive detachment, pouring your best effort into the work itself and then releasing the outcome, you maintain your equilibrium. You can accept feedback gracefully, adapt to changes, and remain a positive, influential member of the team regardless of the final decision. Your value and your influence become rooted in your character and your actions, not in a fleeting result. So where might attachment be hindering your effectiveness right now? Is it in a personal relationship where you're trying to control another person's feelings or choices? Is it in a creative pursuit where you're so focused on external validation or going viral that it stifles your authentic expression? Or is it in a goal where the fear of not achieving it is preventing you from taking the necessary steps? When we disentangle our self-worth from an outcome, we reclaim our power to act with intention and integrity. We become like an archer described by the Stoics. The archer's job is to focus on taking the perfect shot, aiming carefully, holding the bow steady, and releasing the arrow smoothly. Once the arrow leaves the bow, it is in the hands of fate. The wind may gust, a bird may fly past. The outcome is no longer theirs to command. The skilled archer finds satisfaction in the excellence of the shot itself, not solely in the arrow hitting the bullseye. That is the essence of influencing the world without being ruled by it. Silence, in Stoicism, is a discipline, not an absence but a choice. It is a form of power cultivated through restraint, a deliberate space you create for understanding and strategic action. While our modern world often mistakes constant communication for competence, the Stoics understood that true wisdom frequently resides in knowing when to withhold your words. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this in his private journal, writing, "To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it." This isn't a metaphor for ignoring the world, but for the profound impact of a steady, silent presence. He also advised himself to be for the most part silent, and to speak only what is necessary. This practice of intentional quiet is what transforms simple not speaking into tactical stillness. When you choose silence, you are not checking out of a conversation. You are actively engaging with it on a deeper level. You become a keen observer of the subtleties that others miss in their rush to be heard, the slight shift in body language, the hesitation in someone's voice, the unspoken assumption lurking behind their words. This observational perch gives you a significant strategic advantage. Your silence also conveys a deep sense of confidence and self-assurance. In a room full of people competing to speak, the person who is comfortable with silence often appears the most certain and in control. This composure can be disarming. It can compel others to fill the void, often revealing more than they intended, or it can prompt them to genuinely reflect on what has just been said, leading to more thoughtful and less reactive dialogue. Imagine a common scenario, a high-pressure business meeting where a new proposal is being debated. Tensions are starting to rise as different personalities clash over the best path forward. One person makes a strongly critical comment directed at your part of the project. The natural, impulsive reaction is to immediately defend your work, to explain your reasoning, and to counter the criticism. But what if instead you chose the discipline of silence? You simply listen, maintain calm eye contact, and absorb the feedback without a verbal reaction. That pause, even if it only lasts for 7 or 8 seconds, completely changes the dynamic of the room. Your silence prevents the situation from escalating into a personal argument. It subtly communicates that you are considering the feedback seriously, which can disarm the critic and make them feel heard. Very often, the other person, uncomfortable with the silence they have created, will actually begin to backtrack, clarify, or soften their position. Your tactical silence created the space for that shift to occur, allowing the conversation to move from confrontation back to collaboration. This principle extends far beyond the boardroom. Think about a difficult conversation with a partner or a friend where emotions are running high. In the heat of the moment, we often say things we don't mean simply to fill the painful silence or to score a point. Choosing to stay quiet, to truly listen to the other person's hurt or anger without immediately interjecting your defense, is one of the most powerful and compassionate choices you can make. Your silence in that instance isn't agreement or surrender, it is a gift of space. It allows the raw emotion to settle and makes room for genuine understanding to emerge. It is in that quiet space that real healing and connection can begin, far more effectively than through any well-rehearsed argument. So when has your own words gotten in your way? Can you recall a specific instance where speaking immediately led to a misunderstanding or escalated a conflict? And conversely, can you think of a time when staying silent, even though it was difficult, allowed for a better outcome to unfold naturally? The discipline of silence is a muscle that requires training. It means fighting the ingrained impulse to have the last word, to correct a minor error, or to showcase your knowledge. It is about understanding that your greatest influence often lies not in what you add to the noise, but in the purposeful and potent quiet you choose to hold. Stoics teach us to see things as they are, not as we fear or wish them to be. This is the essence of observing without judging, a fundamental practice that transforms how we engage with the world and the people in it. It's about consciously pausing the automatic process of layering our interpretations, our fears, and our biases onto a neutral event. The ancient Stoics, particularly Epictetus, gave us a powerful framework for this with their concept of impressions. An impression is the initial sensory or mental image that strikes us the raw data of an event. For instance, your boss scheduling an unexpected meeting is just an impression. The judgment you immediately add, "I must be in trouble," or "they're unhappy with my work," is where the suffering and reactivity begin. The Stoic skill lies in creating a gap between receiving that impression and assenting to a judgment about it. In that small space of non-judgment, you find your freedom and your power to choose a wiser response. This practice of neutral observation is incredibly influential because it directly reduces reactivity. When you react impulsively from a place of judgment, you are often responding to your own internal story rather than the actual event in front of you. This creates confusion, escalates tension, and rarely leads to an optimal outcome. However, when you can simply observe and describe the facts without the emotional charge, you bring a calming, clarifying presence to any situation. Others sense this lack of agenda or defensiveness in you, and it allows them to lower their own guard. Your stillness becomes a mirror that reflects the situation back to them with more clarity, often enabling them to see their own judgments and choose a different path. You influence the entire dynamic not by doing anything forceful, but by not doing the thing everyone expects, by not reacting, not blaming, and not adding fuel to the fire. Consider a common domestic conflict. A partner comes home from work and immediately retreats to another room without saying hello. The initial impression is simply their movement and silence. A judgmental reaction might instantly label this as "they're ignoring me" or "they're angry at me," which would likely lead to a reactive response of coldness or a confrontational "what's wrong with you?" Now imagine applying the Stoic practice. You observe the action neutrally. My partner walked in and went into the other room quietly. Without layering on a story, you have space to consider other, more neutral possibilities. They might have had an exhausting day and need a few minutes to decompose. From this calm, observational stance, your response can be entirely different. You might give them a few minutes of space and then calmly ask, "Everything okay?" "You seemed quiet when you got home." This approach, born from pausing judgment, acknowledges the fact without accusation. It opens the door for communication rather than slamming it shut with defensiveness. It escalates the situation before it even becomes one. This principle is just as powerful in professional settings. Imagine a colleague criticizing an idea you presented during a team meeting. The impression is the sound of their words. The judgment might be, they're trying to undermine me in front of everyone, which would trigger a reaction of defensiveness or a counterattack. But if you can observe the criticism as mere data, they have stated a concern about point X of my proposal. You can respond not from a wounded ego, but from a place of collaborative problem solving. You might say, "Thank you for highlighting that potential risk. Can you help me understand your concern a bit more so we can address it?" This neutral, fact-based response completely transforms the interaction from a personal conflict into a shared effort to improve the project. Your lack of reactivity influences your colleague to engage more constructively and demonstrates leadership and emotional maturity to everyone else in the room. How often does your own judgment cloud your interactions? We live our lives through a filter of preconceived notions, past experiences, and personal anxieties. We often don't even realize we're doing it. We see a friend's brief text message and judge it as cold when they were simply busy. We hear a piece of feedback and judge it as an attack when it was intended as help. Each time we add that judgment, we narrow our possible responses to ones based on fear or defensiveness. The practice of observing without judging is the work of wiping that filter clean, even if just for a moment, to see the reality of the situation with greater clarity. It is in that clear space that we find our most thoughtful, virtuous, and ultimately influential actions. When you stop judging the world, you start understanding it, and that understanding is the most solid foundation for true influence. How does your inner state shape your outer world? This isn't a mystical question, but a practical one the Stoics took very seriously. They believed that our internal landscape, the quietness or turbulence of our own minds, directly determines the quality of our actions and, by extension, the influence we have on everything around us. Seneca referred to this ideal inner state as euthymia, a Greek word meaning tranquility or calmness of soul. He described it not as a passive, vacant serenity, but as an active and resilient composure. It's the deep, still water beneath the surface waves, a place of unshakable poise from which we can navigate any storm with clarity and purpose. This inner calm is the very bedrock of tactical stillness. It's what allows you to project quiet confidence without saying a word, because that confidence is rooted in a genuine, unflappable inner stability. In his writings, Seneca often contrasted this tranquility with the chaos of a mind blown about by external events. He argued that we cannot control what happens to us, but we have absolute jurisdiction over how we arrange our inner world in response. Cultivating this calm isn't about numbing yourself to life or becoming indifferent. It is the opposite. It is about developing a profound readiness, a composed and focused awareness that allows you to act with precision and virtue when action is required, rather than simply reacting from a place of panic, anger, or fear. A still mind is a strategic mind. It can assess a situation clearly, identify the most effective course of action, and execute it without the interference of emotional static. Your inner calm becomes a resource you can draw upon, a wellspring of strength that others can feel simply by being in your presence. Consider a scenario everyone can relate to, a high-pressure presentation that suddenly goes wrong. The projector fails, your slides are inaccessible, and the room grows restless. In this moment, your inner state is everything. If your mind is chaotic and frantic, that energy will flood the room. You might stammer, apologize excessively, or show visible frustration, all signals that erode the audience's confidence in you and your message. Now imagine the alternative. You have cultivated a practice of inner calm. When the technology fails, you take a slow, conscious breath. You accept the reality of the situation without internal panic. Your outward response is simply a reflection of this inner steadiness. You might make a light, graceful comment and proceed without the slides, speaking from your knowledge and passion for the subject. Your calm is not indifference to the problem, it is a composed readiness to adapt. This demeanor is contagious. It assures the audience that everything is under control, that you are competent and trustworthy. They relax because you are relaxed. Your inner calm has directly influenced their outer experience, turning a potential disaster into a demonstration of true professionalism and poise. This principle extends to leadership in times of genuine crisis. History is filled with leaders whose value was not in their grand speeches but in their unwavering composure. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, as the world stood on the brink of nuclear war, President John F. Kennedy was known for maintaining an almost stoic calm in the Situation Room. While his advisors debated with high emotion, his steady demeanor, a product of his inner discipline, created an atmosphere where reasoned analysis could prevail over reactive fear. His calm did not mean he underestimated the threat. It meant he was composed and ready to make the most deliberate, careful decisions possible. His inner state shaped the outer world by preventing a catastrophic reaction and fostering an environment where a peaceful resolution could be found. He influenced the course of history not just through his actions but through the quality of his presence. So how steady is your own inner compass when pressure mounts? Think about the last time you faced an unexpected setback, a difficult conversation, or a tight deadline. Did you feel a surge of anxiety that clouded your thinking? Or were you able to access a place of calm focus? Assessing this is the first step toward cultivation. The Stoics weren't just born with this tranquility. They built it through daily practices like meditation on principles, negative visualization, and reflective journaling. They trained their minds to return to a state of euthymia, much like an athlete trains their muscles. Your ability to influence your environment begins with your command over your internal world. When you are the calm in the chaos, you become a point of stability that others naturally gravitate toward and trust. Your stillness speaks volumes before you ever utter a word. To influence without speaking, first learn to listen, truly listen. This goes far beyond simply hearing the words someone is saying while you wait for your turn to talk. Deep listening is a profound act of tactical stillness, a complete surrender of your own agenda to fully receive and understand another person's reality. The Stoics, though not always explicitly detailed in their writings on communication, placed immense value on this quality of attention and empathy. Musonius Rufus, a teacher of Epictetus, emphasized that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we might listen more than we speak. He saw this not just as practical advice but as a philosophical duty, a way to practice justice and kindness in our daily interactions. For the Stoic, listening deeply is an exercise in humility and focus, a way to connect with the shared human reason in others and to understand the world from a perspective beyond our own. When you engage in this level of attentive silence, you accomplish something remarkable. You make the other person feel genuinely heard and valued, which is a rare and powerful experience in our distracted world. This act of validation builds a foundation of trust and psychological safety that is essential for any real influence to occur. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel understood. In that space of trust, your silent presence becomes a catalyst for their own thinking. They begin to lower their defenses, explore their own ideas more openly, and often arrive at conclusions or insights that feel like their own discovery. This is the subtle magic of deep listening. You don't need to argue or persuade. By creating a container for their thoughts through your quiet attention, you guide them naturally toward clarity. and very often, that clarity aligns with a perspective you might have otherwise had to fight to impose. Your influence is felt not through the force of your arguments, but through the quality of your presence. Consider the work of a skilled therapist or a professional coach. Their primary tool isn't a bag of clever advice or solutions. It is their ability to listen with absolute focus and without judgment. They master the art of creating spacious silence. After a client shares something, a therapist might pause for several seconds, not rushing to fill the air with reassurance or interpretation. That intentional silence is active, not passive. It communicates, what you said is important. I am processing it fully. There is more space here for you to go deeper. This often compels the client to sit with their own words, reflect on their meaning, and frequently, they will uncover a deeper layer of truth or emotion entirely on their own. The therapist's influence comes from their disciplined stillness, which empowers the client to find their own answers. This is far more powerful than any directive could ever be, because the insight is owned and believed by the person who discovered it. This practice is just as transformative in everyday life, far outside a clinical setting. Think about a conversation with a frustrated employee or an upset friend. Our common impulse is to jump in with solutions to defend ourselves or to share a similar story of our own. But what happens if you resist that impulse? What if you instead make your only goal to understand exactly what they are feeling and why? You listen to the words, but you also listen to the emotion behind them. You listen to what is not being said, your body language, a nod, maintaining eye contact, leaning in slightly, all communicates that you are fully with them. You might paraphrase what they've said to ensure understanding, not to correct them. In doing so, you give them the gift of feeling seen. This process alone can dissolve frustration and anger because often the core need is simply to be acknowledged. From that place of connection, any practical solution you might suggest later will be received from a completely different, more open emotional space. So how can you cultivate this skill? The simplest and most challenging practice is to listen without preparing your response. In your next conversation, make a conscious decision to turn off the internal monologue that is already crafting your reply while the other person is still talking. Instead, pour all of your attention into the act of receiving their words. When they finish, allow yourself to breathe and exist in a moment of silence before you speak. That tiny gap is where understanding lives. It's where you transition from reacting to truly responding. Challenge yourself in a low-stakes conversation today. Can you listen with the sole intention of understanding, with no need to reply, agree, or fix anything at all? You may be surprised to find that in your silence, others find their voice, and in your understanding, they become more open to yours. By choosing discomfort, we become less controlled by external circumstances. This is the radical yet profoundly practical Stoic idea of voluntary discomfort, a deliberate training regimen for the mind designed to build unshakable resilience. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and understood true hardship, was a powerful advocate for this practice. He taught his students that to be undisturbed by the inevitable challenges of life, they must actively train themselves to be comfortable with unease. He famously said, "If you want to be steady, be first steady in the face of unsteadiness. If you want to be comfortable, first be comfortable with discomfort." This isn't about seeking pain for its own sake or glorifying suffering. It is a strategic form of self-discipline, a way to inoculate yourself against the fear and anxiety that external events can trigger. By willingly stepping into minor, manageable forms of discomfort, you systematically desensitize yourself to the shocks and surprises of fortune, ensuring they never hold power over your inner peace. This practice is the training ground for tactical stillness. Think of it like a mental immune system. If you live a completely sterile, controlled life where you avoid all germs, your body's immune system becomes weak and hypersensitive. The first minor cold you encounter feels like a major illness. The same is true for the mind. If you structure your entire life to avoid all inconvenience, frustration, or slight hardship, your psychological resilience atrophies. When an unexpected problem arises, a traffic jam, a critical comment, a missed promotion, you lack the mental fortitude to handle it with grace. Your reaction is outsized and chaotic. But if you have voluntarily and consistently practiced being cold, hungry, tired, or inconvenienced, your tolerance for discomfort expands dramatically. A traffic jam becomes a minor delay, not a rage-inducing crisis. Criticism becomes data to consider, not a personal attack that shatters your confidence. Your baseline for what constitutes a true problem is reset, allowing you to maintain your composure and your strategic stillness in situations where others are losing their heads. Consider the act of maintaining composure during harsh criticism. For most people, this is an intensely uncomfortable experience that triggers a flood of defensive emotions. Now imagine you have been practicing voluntary discomfort. Perhaps you've chosen to take cold showers each morning. The initial shock is intense, but you learn to breathe through it, to accept the sensation without fighting it, and to find a point of calm within the storm of physical protest. You have, in a controlled setting, practiced the exact same skill needed to handle emotional discomfort, the ability to observe a distressing sensation without being compelled to react to it. So when your boss or a colleague delivers tough feedback, that same mental muscle activates. You feel the initial flush of heat, the urge to defend yourself, but you can breathe through it. You can create a small space of stillness between the stimulus and your response. Because you are familiar with discomfort, you are not terrified of this feeling. You can listen, assess the feedback for useful nuggets, and respond thoughtfully rather than react defensively. Your stillness in that moment is not a passive surrender. It is an active demonstration of strength that often earns more respect than any rebuttal ever could. The forms this practice can take are as varied as our daily lives. It doesn't require grand gestures of austerity. It can be as simple as choosing to walk instead of drive for a short trip on a chilly day, intentionally listening to a political viewpoint you disagree with without formulating a counter-argument, fasting from social media for a full 24 hours, or even just sitting in silence for 10 minutes without any distraction. The key is the voluntary nature of the act. You are not a victim of these circumstances, you are their author. This shifts your relationship with discomfort from one of resistance to one of agency. Each small act is a repetition, a weight lifted in the gym of your mind, strengthening your core of resilience. Where in your own life could you begin to introduce a small dose of voluntary discomfort? Could you turn the thermostat down a degree or two, take on a challenging physical task you normally avoid, or have a difficult but necessary conversation you've been putting off? These are the reps that build the mental muscle for stillness, ensuring that when life inevitably brings greater challenges to your door, you are not controlled by them but can meet them with steady, unwavering calm. What separates a reaction from a response? It's a question that cuts to the very heart of Stoic practice, and the difference is everything when it comes to wielding true influence. A reaction is instant, raw, and almost always emotional. It's the defensive retort that flies out of your mouth before you've even processed the comment, the surge of anger that makes you slam a door, the wave of anxiety that dictates a panicked decision. A response, in the Stoic sense, is something entirely different. It is a considered, deliberate, and virtuous action chosen from a place of clarity. It is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. The space between the two, that critical gap, is where our freedom and our power truly reside. Marcus Aurelius provided perhaps the most elegant description of this space when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He was pointing to that exact moment of choice. Something happens, a stimulus, an external event, and then there is a gap. For most people, that gap is infinitesimally small, and they immediately flood it with a reaction dictated by habit, ego, or fear. The Stoics' work is to consciously widen that gap through tactical stillness. It is in that expanded space of quiet awareness that you can interrogate the initial impression, question your automatic judgment, and choose a course of action that aligns with your principles and your goals, not just your fleeting emotions. This is how stillness becomes an active force for influence. It gives you the runway to take off in a chosen direction, rather than simply exploding on the launch pad. History offers a powerful example in the figure of Abraham Lincoln, particularly during the immense pressures of the American Civil War. He was routinely subjected to vicious personal and political attacks, not just from Confederate sympathizers but from within his own cabinet and party. One of his secretaries of war, Edwin Stanton, was known to have openly insulted him, on one occasion even calling him a fool. A reactive leader operating from wounded pride would have likely fired Stanton on the spot, creating a powerful enemy and destabilizing his administration during a time of national crisis. But Lincoln, who studied the Stoics, chose a different path. He created that gap. He allowed the insult to land. He sat with the initial sting, and he responded from a place of strategic calculation rather than emotional reaction. His famous reply was to say that if Stanton called him a fool, then he must be one, because Stanton was generally right and wise in his assessments. This disarming, humble response not only neutralized the insult but ultimately solidified Stanton's loyalty. Lincoln's influence grew because he demonstrated a strength that was unshakable by mere words, a strength that came from his ability to pause and respond rather than impulsively react. This principle is just as potent in the conflicts of our daily lives. Imagine you receive a sharply worded email from a colleague, publicly criticizing a project you've worked hard on. The reaction is a hot flush of embarrassment and anger, a racing heart, and the immediate urge to fire back an even sharper reply, to defend your work and put them in their place. This reaction feels powerful in the moment, but it almost always escalates the conflict, damages the relationship, and makes you look defensive and unprofessional. Now imagine applying the Stoic pause. You read the email and feel that familiar surge, but instead of clicking reply, you close the laptop, you get up and walk away. You take 10 deep breaths, you widen the gap. In that space, you can move from reaction to response. You can ask yourself Stoic questions. Is this criticism within my control? Is there any part of it that is true and useful? What is the most virtuous and effective way to handle this? Perhaps your response, crafted an hour later, is a request for a quick call to discuss their concerns further. This approach de-escalates, seeks understanding, and demonstrates confident leadership. It influences the outcome by prioritizing a resolution over the temporary satisfaction of a counterattack. Can you recall a time in your own recent past when creating even a few seconds of pause completely changed the outcome of a situation? Perhaps it was biting your tongue during an argument with your partner instead of saying the hurtful thing you were thinking, and in that silence, the anger simply dissolved. Maybe it was taking a full day to think over a major purchase instead of buying it on an impulse and realizing you didn't actually need it. These moments, however small, are victories of Stoic practice. They are proof that you are not a slave to your first impulse. Each time you consciously create that gap between stimulus and response, you are strengthening your ability to act with intention. You are building a life guided not by chaotic external events, but by your own inner wisdom and virtue. That is the foundation of an influence that is both powerful and enduring. Your body speaks before you do. What is it saying? This isn't just a modern observation from psychology. It's a concept deeply embedded in Stoic philosophy, which teaches that virtue isn't just a private mental exercise but must be reflected in our entire being. The Stoics believed in a profound harmony between mind and body, where inner virtue and outer composure are inextricably linked. Seneca frequently wrote about this connection, suggesting that a disordered and agitated external appearance was a clear sign of a troubled and unvirtuous soul. He advised cultivating an outward tranquility that faithfully mirrors the inner calm of a rational mind. For the Stoic, mastering your physical presence isn't about vanity or manipulating others. It's an essential discipline of aligning your entire self with reason. Your posture, your gestures, the very stillness of your body become the visible expression of your inner philosophy, communicating your equanimity long before you choose to speak a single word. This aligned body language is a powerful, silent tool of influence. When your non-verbal cues project confidence and calm, they directly shape how others perceive you and, more importantly, how they respond to you. A steady gaze, relaxed shoulders, and deliberate movements convey a sense of control and assurance that can de-escalate tension, command respect, and build trust without any need for verbal declaration. In a tense negotiation or a high-stakes meeting, the person who sits perfectly still, who listens without fidgeting, and who meets a challenging stare with calm, open eye contact immediately holds a position of strength. Their tactical stillness is amplified through their physiology, broadcasting a message of unshakable competence. People are biologically wired to read these cues, often at a subconscious level. They will mirror your calm, their own heart rates may slow, and they will be more inclined to trust your judgment because your body tells them you are trustworthy. You are influencing the entire emotional ecosystem of the room through the quiet authority of your posture. Consider a practical scenario where this principle comes to life. Imagine you are about to deliver a presentation that makes you nervous. The common, reactive response is to let the anxiety dictate your physical form. Slumped shoulders, averted eyes, quick, shallow breaths, and perhaps nervous gestures like tapping a pen or shifting weight from foot to foot. This body language broadcasts uncertainty and instantly undermines your credibility, no matter how brilliant your content might be. Now, instead, you apply a Stoic practice of mindful posture. Before you even begin, you take a moment to consciously plant your feet firmly on the ground. Roll your shoulders back and down and lift your chin. You take a slow, deep breath into your diaphragm, and you make a deliberate choice to hold eye contact with individuals in the audience. This isn't about striking a fake power pose. It's about using your body as a tool to actively cultivate the inner calm you seek. By adopting the physiology of a calm and confident person, you send a powerful signal back to your own brain, triggering a genuine reduction in stress hormones and an increase in feelings of confidence. Your aligned body language not only influences how the audience sees you but actually changes your internal state, allowing you to access the tactical stillness needed to deliver your message effectively. This practice extends far beyond formal presentations into every interaction of our daily lives. Think about a difficult conversation with a loved one. If you approach them with arms crossed, a tense jaw, and a body turned slightly away, you are communicating defensiveness and resistance before a single word of disagreement is ever spoken. That closed posture will almost certainly put the other person on guard, ensuring the conversation starts from a place of conflict. Conversely, if you make a conscious effort to adopt an open posture, uncrossing your arms, turning your body fully toward them, and maintaining a soft but attentive gaze, you are non-verbally communicating that you are present, you are listening, and you are safe to talk to. This physical alignment creates a foundation of psychological safety that makes productive and compassionate communication possible. Your stillness and openness become an invitation for them to lower their own defenses. So how can you begin to practice this? Start with simple awareness. For the next week, make it a point to periodically check in with your body throughout the day, especially in moments of low-grade stress like waiting in a long line, sitting in traffic, or preparing for a work call. What is your posture like? Is your jaw clenched? Are your shoulders hunched up near your ears? Simply noticing these patterns is the first step. Then, choose one specific situation, perhaps your next team meeting or a coffee date with a friend, and make your primary goal not what you say, but how you hold yourself. Focus on keeping your movements slow and deliberate, your breathing even, and your posture open and grounded. Afterward, take a moment to reflect. Did you feel different? How did people respond to you? You might discover that a slight tilt of the head while listening made the other person feel more heard, or that simply sitting up straighter made you feel more engaged and authoritative. Your body is a constant, silent communicator. By bringing Stoic intention to its language, you harness a profound form of influence that operates quietly beneath the surface of words. Influence begins with accepting what is outside your control. This is the core of the Stoic Dichotomy of Control, a mental model that acts like a filter for your energy and attention, ensuring you invest yourself only where it can truly make a difference. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus opens his manual for life, the Enchiridion, with this very idea, stating, "Some things are within our power while others are not." It sounds almost too simple, but this distinction is the foundation upon which all tactical stillness is built. Within our power are our own judgments, our intentions, our desires, our aversions, in short, everything that is the product of our own inner world. Not within our power is everything else, the actions of other people, the weather, our reputation, our wealth, our health, or the past. The profound clarity of this separation is what grants you the mental space to be still and influential, because it immediately tells you where your efforts are destined to fail and where they are almost certain to bear fruit. When you refuse to accept this boundary, you engage in a futile and exhausting form of struggle against reality itself. You pour immense mental and emotional energy into trying to manage other people's opinions, force a specific outcome you cannot guarantee, or rewrite a past event that is already done. This is the energy of reactivity, anxiety, frustration, and anger, and it drains you of the very presence needed for effective action. Acceptance, in the Stoic sense, is the opposite of resignation. It is not about giving up, it is about waking up to the actual facts of the situation. It is the conscious decision to stop arguing with reality and to instead see it clearly without the filter of your wishes or fears. This act of clear seeing is incredibly liberating. It instantly halts the wasteful expenditure of energy on the uncontrollable, conserving your strength and focus for the things you can actually influence: your own plans, your own efforts, your own attitude, and your own responses. Your stillness, then, comes from this conservation of energy. You are no longer frantically trying to push the ocean's tides. You are calmly and effectively adjusting your own sails. Consider a scenario familiar to almost everyone: a major work presentation that gets cancelled at the last minute due to a key decision maker falling ill. The uncontrollable elements here are the illness and the rescheduling. A person who hasn't internalized the dichotomy might react with frustration, anger at the situation, or anxiety about the delay. They might spend mental energy complaining, ruminating on the bad luck, or trying to find someone to blame. This reaction is not only pointless but actively harmful to their influence. It makes them appear inflexible and easily flustered. Now observe the Stoic response, grounded in acceptance. They immediately acknowledge the reality. The meeting is off. They accept this fact without internal protest. This acceptance creates a pocket of tactical stillness. With their energy preserved and their mind clear, they can now focus with full power on the things they can control. They can use the unexpected free time to refine their presentation even further. They can send a gracious email wishing a speedy recovery and proactively suggesting new times. They can demonstrate adaptability and professionalism. Their influence grows because they are seen as someone who handles unforeseen challenges with grace and efficiency, not as someone who is derailed by them. This principle extends to the most personal aspects of our lives. Think about a parent trying to control an adult child's career choices or life decisions. The parent's love and concern are within their control, but the child's ultimate choices are not. A parent who cannot accept this boundary will create tension, strain the relationship, and likely push the child further away. Their attempts to control destroy their influence. Conversely, a parent who practices Stoic acceptance focuses their energy only on what they can control, offering loving advice when asked, providing a supportive and non-judgmental ear, and embodying the values they hope to see. This respectful acceptance builds trust and strengthens the relationship, making the child far more likely to seek out and value the parent's perspective. The parent's influence is magnified through the power of letting go. Where in your own life are you currently trying to hold back the tide? Is it in a relationship where you're attempting to control another person's feelings or change their core personality? Is it at work where you're fixated on getting credit or recognition, things ultimately bestowed by others? Or is it an internal struggle where you're endlessly replaying and trying to change a past mistake, a moment you can never get back? Each of these is a leak in your reservoir of energy. The practice of the dichotomy is to consciously identify these leaks and patch them with the cement of acceptance. It is to look at any frustrating situation and ask the two most liberating questions in the Stoic toolkit. What in this scenario is truly within my power? And what is not? The answer immediately tells you where to direct your efforts and where to release your grip. By ceasing to fight the uncontrollable, you free up all your resources to masterfully navigate the things you can. This is how acceptance becomes the starting point for all genuine and effective influence. By anticipating obstacles, we rob them of their power to surprise us. This is the heart of the Stoic exercise known as Premeditatio Malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. Far from being a pessimistic or fearful practice, it is a powerful form of mental inoculation, a way to rehearse potential challenges in the safe space of your own mind so that you are never caught off guard by the turbulence of fortune. Seneca was a master of this technique, frequently advising his readers in his letters to regularly contemplate the possibility of loss, failure, and hardship. He wrote that we should often picture ourselves in exile, in poverty, in illness, or in grief, not to dwell on misery, but to realize a profound truth that we can endure these things. He believed that by mentally walking through these scenarios, we strip future difficulties of their element of shock and their ability to paralyze us with fear. This rehearsal builds a deep and resilient confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you have already faced down your fears in your imagination and have a plan to meet them with virtue. This mental preparation is the absolute bedrock of tactical stillness. Think of it as the difference between a soldier who has never seen combat and a seasoned veteran who has trained for every conceivable scenario. When the first shot is fired, the rookie freezes, overwhelmed by the chaos and the unexpectedness of it all. The veteran, however, has already been here 1,000 times in drills and simulations. Their heart might still race, but their mind is clear, their actions are deliberate, and their presence is steady. They are not surprised, so they are not reactive. Premeditatio Malorum provides this exact same training for the challenges of civilian life. By visualizing potential setbacks, you are effectively creating a mental playbook. When a problem then arises in reality, it feels familiar. You've already visited this place in your mind. This familiarity creates an immediate sense of calm and control. Instead of being hijacked by panic, you can access that tactical stillness, draw upon your pre-considered responses, and act with a composure that others will find both remarkable and deeply influential. Your calm in the storm signals to everyone around you that the situation is manageable because you are already managing it from within. Consider a common modern scenario. A crucial project you've been leading for months suddenly hits a massive, unforeseen setback. A key team member resigns, a vendor fails to deliver, or a new policy renders your entire approach obsolete. The reactive, untrained response is a flood of stress hormones, a sense of panic, and a frantic scramble that often leads to poor decisions made from a place of fear. Now imagine you have been practicing Premeditatio Malorum. During your morning meditation or journaling sessions, you've specifically visualized this very possibility. You've asked yourself, what would I do if we lost our main developer? Or how would I respond if our primary supplier let us down? You haven't just imagined the disaster, you've mentally walked through the practical steps. You've considered who you would call first, how you would reallocate resources, and what your calming message to the rest of the team would be. So when the setback actually occurs, the emotional impact is dramatically dulled. It's not a shocking catastrophe. It's a scenario you've already accepted and prepared for. Your response is not a reaction, but a rollout of a pre-considered plan. You gather your team and with a calm demeanor you say, "All right, we've hit an obstacle. Here's how we're going to adapt." Your stillness in that moment is not passive. It is the active application of prepared resilience. It inspires confidence, prevents panic from spreading, and turns a potential disaster into a manageable problem, solidifying your role as a truly influential leader. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity and flexibility. You don't need to contemplate grand tragedies every day. It can be applied to the smaller frustrations that often derail our composure. Before an important drive, briefly visualize getting stuck in terrible traffic. What will you do? Perhaps you decide you'll use the time to listen to an educational podcast or practice mindful breathing. Before a difficult conversation, visualize the other person reacting with anger or dismissal. How will you respond? You might mentally rehearse, keeping your voice calm and returning to the core facts. By premeditating these minor evils, you transform potential triggers into non-events. You maintain your equanimity because you saw it coming and you already decided how you would handle it. So why not try this for yourself with an upcoming challenge you're facing? It could be a presentation, a difficult talk with your teenager, or a busy week ahead. Take just 5 minutes today to sit quietly and deliberately imagine the worst-case scenario unfolding. Don't just stop at the scary part, mentally walk all the way through it. See yourself acknowledging the setback, feeling the initial sting, and then taking the first calm, logical step forward. What is that step, then the next? By rehearsing this path in your mind, you are building neural pathways of resilience. You are programming yourself for stillness. When you face the real situation, you may find that your fear has been replaced with a quiet readiness, and that your ability to influence the outcome has grown exponentially because you are no longer afraid of what might go wrong. What could you achieve if you embraced slowness as a strength? In our world of instant gratification and rapid-fire responses, patience is often misunderstood as a passive form of waiting, a mere pause until something happens. But from a Stoic perspective, patience is something far more powerful and active. It is a deliberate virtue, a form of disciplined endurance that allows you to align your actions with the natural timing of events, thereby unlocking a deeper, more sustainable form of influence. Marcus Aurelius frequently turned his gaze to nature to understand this principle, observing how a river carves a canyon not through force, but through persistent, patient flow over millennia. He saw this same patient intelligence in human affairs, reminding himself in his meditations that nothing happens to anybody that he is not fitted by nature to bear, and that frustration arises not from events themselves, but from our own impatience with their unfolding. Patience, for the Stoic, is the wisdom to distinguish between inaction and strategic timing, between surrendering and allowing a situation to mature. This active patience is what prevents the costly errors that come from haste. When we are impatient, we are governed by a desire for immediate resolution. This pressure can cloud our judgment, leading us to push too hard, commit too soon, or abandon a worthwhile endeavor simply because it isn't yielding instant results. We might accept a flawed deal in a negotiation because we're tired of the back and forth, or we might lash out in a relationship to force a confrontation rather than allowing understanding to develop organically. Impatience is essentially a form of resistance to the current of reality. It's an attempt to force the river to flow faster, which only results in exhaustion and often getting swept away by the current. Patience, on the other hand, is the skill of flowing with that current, conserving your energy, observing the landscape for the most opportune moment to steer, and acting with precision when the time is right. It is the ultimate expression of focusing on what you can control, your own timing and effort, while gracefully accepting what you cannot, the pace at which others respond or circumstances evolve. History offers a masterclass in this virtue through the leadership of someone like Nelson Mandela. His 27 years of imprisonment could have easily bred a desperate impatience for revenge and immediate change upon his release. Instead, that prolonged period became a crucible for cultivating a profound, strategic patience. He understood that true, lasting influence in dismantling apartheid and rebuilding a nation could not be achieved through a sudden, violent overthrow that would fracture the country further. He had to wait to plan and to allow the political landscape both within and outside South Africa to shift to a point where negotiated change was possible. His patience was not passive waiting, it was an active preparation. He studied his captors, he built alliances, he refined his philosophy, and he prepared himself to lead with compassion rather than bitterness. When the moment finally arrived, his patience had earned him the moral authority and the strategic position to act with immense influence, steering his country toward a more peaceful future. His power was magnified 1,000-fold because he had the strength to be slow, to embrace the long game when everyone else was desperate for a quick fix. This principle is just as critical in our own professional and personal pursuits. Consider the process of building a successful business or mastering a complex skill. The path is inevitably littered with setbacks, slow periods of growth, and seemingly fruitless effort. The impatient entrepreneur might pivot their strategy every few months, chasing the next trend, never allowing any single idea the time to mature and find its audience. They succumb to what is often called shiny object syndrome, and their influence remains scattered and shallow. In contrast, the patient leader stays committed to their core vision. They understand that trust is built slowly, that brand recognition accumulates over years, and that deep expertise is not gained overnight. They make strategic decisions not for a quarterly report, but for a decade-long legacy. Their influence grows steadily and roots deeply because it is built on the solid foundation of consistent, patient effort, not the shaky ground of reactive haste. So where has impatience secretly been costing you your influence? Perhaps it's in a mentorship relationship where you expected a protege to grasp concepts immediately, and your frustration stifled their confidence and growth. Maybe it's in a personal goal like getting in shape, where you abandoned a new routine after a few weeks because you didn't see dramatic results, thus never allowing the compound interest of small daily actions to pay off. Or it could be in a creative project that you rushed to completion to meet an artificial deadline, sacrificing quality and depth for the sake of speed. Impatience often disguises itself as ambition, but true ambition understands the value of the slow bake. The Stoics remind us that nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. By aligning our efforts with this patient, persistent rhythm, we stop forcing outcomes and start allowing them to emerge, often more beautifully and effectively than our impatient minds could ever have engineered. In Stoicism, the most powerful message is often unspoken. It resonates not through eloquent speeches or persuasive arguments, but through the quiet, consistent integrity of a life lived in accordance with virtue. This is the essence of leading by example, a form of influence so profound it bypasses intellectual debate and speaks directly to the human spirit. Epictetus, who focused intensely on aligning one's actions with one's principles, taught that we should not be so concerned with convincing others through words, but with demonstrating the truth through our own conduct. He famously said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." This embodies the core of tactical stillness in action. Your very presence, your calm demeanor, your ethical choices become a silent but potent form of communication that can inspire change in others far more effectively than any lecture or command ever could. This happens because actions are inherently more credible than words. Anyone can say they value patience, courage, or justice, but it is only when we see someone actually practicing these virtues under pressure that we truly believe in their commitment. When you embody the change you wish to see, you become a living proof of concept. Your life becomes the argument. This is not about performative virtue or trying to be perfect for an audience. It is the natural outward expression of an inner commitment to wisdom. For the Stoic, this alignment is the goal itself. To live a virtuous life is its own reward. Yet, a powerful byproduct of this pursuit is the undeniable influence it has on your environment. People are naturally drawn to and inspired by consistency and integrity. They may doubt what you say, but they will trust what you do. Your tactical stillness, the calm you maintain in chaos, the patience you show in frustration, the fairness you demonstrate when tempted to be otherwise, becomes a mirror that allows others to see a higher standard of behavior reflected back at them, often compelling them to rise to meet it. Consider a real-life instance that plays out in workplaces and communities every day. Imagine a team leader who constantly preaches about the importance of work-life balance and mental well-being during meetings. Yet this same leader consistently sends emails late into the night, brags about never taking vacations, and seems perpetually stressed and burnt out. Their words, however well-intentioned, ring hollow and may even breed resentment. Their team will likely feel pressured to mimic this unhealthy behavior, silently ignoring the official message. Now contrast this with a leader who simply lives these values. They leave the office on time, they use their vacation days, they are fully present and calm during work hours, and they respectfully protect their team's personal time. They never need to make a speech about balance. Their actions communicate it every single day. This silent leadership through example creates psychological safety. It gives the team implicit permission to also prioritize their well-being, leading to greater loyalty, reduced burnout, and higher productivity. The leader's influence is baked into their daily existence, making it far more powerful and authentic than any memo could ever be. This principle of leading by example extends far beyond formal leadership roles and into every facet of our lives. As a parent, you can tell your children to be honest, but they will learn what honesty truly means by watching whether you admit your own mistakes and speak truthfully in difficult situations. In a friendship, you can speak of loyalty, but your friend will feel that loyalty when you show up for them without being asked during a time of need. In your community, you can advocate for kindness, but you inspire it more effectively by simply helping a neighbor or offering a generous act without expectation of reward. In each case, your unspoken virtue does the heavy lifting of influence. It builds trust, establishes your credibility, and invites others to join you in that higher standard through a natural and willing emulation, not through coercion or guilt. So how can you begin to better lead by example in your own sphere of influence? It starts with a moment of honest self-reflection. Look at the values you most loudly proclaim to your family, your team, your friends. Now look closely at your recent actions. Where is the gap? Where do your words say one thing, but your behavior, perhaps subtly, communicates another? The work is to close that gap, not for the sake of others, but for your own integrity. Choose one small, specific area this week. If you value calm, practice tactical stillness the next time you're stuck in traffic instead of succumbing to road rage. If you value continuous learning, let people see you reading a book or admit you don't know something and are eager to find out. Your mission is not to manage others' perceptions, but to align your actions so closely with your principles that your very life becomes a silent, compelling invitation for them to do the same. Emotions are natural, but they need not dictate our actions. This is a foundational Stoic belief that separates raw human experience from reasoned human response. Our feelings arise automatically: anger at a perceived slight, anxiety about an upcoming challenge, jealousy over a colleague's success, but we possess the profound ability to choose what we do with that emotional energy. The Stoics did not advocate for becoming emotionless robots. Rather, they taught us to become skilled observers of our inner world, to examine our impulses before we act upon them, ensuring that our actions serve our deeper goals rather than sabotage them. This practice of emotional regulation is not about suppression. It is about intelligent management, a crucial discipline for anyone seeking to wield genuine influence through tactical stillness. Seneca's powerful essay on anger provides one of the most detailed ancient explorations of this very idea. He describes anger as a brief insanity, a temporary madness that seizes control of a rational mind and leads it to actions that are almost always regretted once the fever passes. He writes that the greatest damage is done not by the initial provocation, but by our unchecked reaction to it. An impulsive outburst of anger can destroy relationships, torpedo careers, and unravel years of built trust in a single moment. Seneca argues that the goal is not to never feel the spark of anger. That may be impossible, but to refuse to feed the spark into a blaze. He advises creating a deliberate pause, a space between the feeling and the action, to ask a simple but transformative question. Will this reaction serve my virtue and my purpose, or will it serve only my immediate ego? This moment of examination is where we reclaim our agency. This practice of pausing to assess is the very mechanism that allows tactical stillness to flourish. When an emotional impulse strikes, it demands immediate expression. It wants to lash out, to withdraw, to dominate, or to flee. but by inserting a moment of conscious awareness, we disrupt this automatic chain reaction. We can acknowledge the emotion, "I am feeling furious right now," without becoming the emotion. We can note its presence without being compelled to obey its commands. From this place of slight detachment, we can evaluate the situation with far greater clarity. We can consider our long-term objectives. What is the outcome I truly desire from this interaction? Is it to win a petty argument, or is it to preserve a valuable relationship? Is it to prove I'm right, or is it to find a collaborative solution? When we align our response with our goals rather than our transient feelings, we move from being reactive participants to influential architects of the situation. Imagine you are in the middle of a heated debate, perhaps a team meeting where a project you deeply care about is being criticized. Someone directly challenges your core idea with what feels like a personal attack. The immediate, visceral impulse is to defend, to counterattack, to prove them wrong and yourself right. Your heart rate spikes, your face flushes, the emotional brain has taken the wheel. Now imagine applying the Stoic pause. Instead of speaking immediately, you take a slow, deliberate breath. You consciously feel the anger without acting on it. You might even make a neutral note to yourself. "That criticism stung, I feel defensive." This simple act of naming the emotion creates instant distance. From this calmer vantage point, you can choose a response that serves your actual goal, the success of the project. Perhaps you say, "I appreciate you pushing on that point. Help me understand your concern better so we can strengthen the idea." This response, born from managed emotion, de-escalates the conflict, demonstrates leadership, and keeps the discussion productive. Your influence soars because you are not controlled by your impulse. This skill transforms every aspect of our lives. It applies equally to the flash of jealousy when a friend shares good news, to the surge of anxiety before an important conversation, or to the wave of impatience with a loved one. Each of these emotions carries an impulse: to make a snide remark, to avoid the conversation, to snap in frustration. Managing the impulse is not about pretending the feeling isn't there. It's about honoring the feeling without letting it steer the ship. It is the difference between a knee-jerk reaction that often leads to regret and a considered response that builds trust and respect over time. The consistent practice of this pause is what builds a reputation for reliability and composure, making people more likely to listen to you and trust your judgment, especially in volatile situations. So what is the emotional trigger that most frequently hijacks your better judgment? Is it a specific type of criticism that always makes you see red? Is it the feeling of being overlooked or disrespected that triggers a defensive or withdrawn reaction? Perhaps it's the anxiety of uncertainty that leads you to procrastinate on an important decision. Take a moment to identify just one. This isn't about judging yourself for having this trigger. It's about bringing it into the light of awareness. Once you know its shape and its taste, you can prepare for it. You can decide in advance that the next time that familiar feeling arises, you will create your Stoic pause. You will breathe into it, name it, and choose your action rather than letting the action choose you. This is how we move from being passengers on the turbulent sea of our emotions to becoming the skilled captains of our own ships, navigating with purpose and grace. In silence and solitude, we find the clarity to influence effectively. This isn't about loneliness or withdrawing from the world in a permanent way. It's about a strategic and purposeful retreat into your own mind to strengthen your inner resources. The Stoics saw solitude not as an escape from others, but as a necessary training ground for being better among them. It is in these quiet moments, free from the opinions and demands of the outside world, that you can hear your own thoughts clearly, examine your judgments, and return to your core principles. This practice of intentional isolation is what builds the unshakable resilience and deep self-awareness that makes tactical stillness possible when you are back in the noisy, demanding social arena. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful men, constantly emphasized the profound benefits of this inward retreat. Despite the immense pressures of leading an empire, he made a daily practice of withdrawing into himself. His personal journal, which we now know as Meditations, is a testament to this habit. It was not written for an audience, it was his private sanctuary for reflection. In its pages, he reminds himself to retreat into yourself, because within his own mind was a place of perfect tranquility that no external turmoil could disturb. He understood that his ability to lead effectively, to make clear-headed decisions amidst chaos, and to influence the vast machinery of Rome depended on this daily cultivation of inner peace. His solitude was the furnace where he forged the composure that allowed him to face endless political intrigue, military campaigns, and personal loss without being swayed from his virtuous path. This regular practice of solitude is what builds the mental and emotional reserves needed for tactical stillness. Think of it like this: every social interaction, especially a difficult one, draws upon your inner resources of patience, focus, and calm. If you are constantly surrounded by people, notifications, and noise, you are perpetually spending from that account without ever making a deposit. You will eventually become emotionally and mentally bankrupt, leaving you reactive, irritable, and easily influenced by the moods of others. Solitude is how you make those vital deposits. It is the time you invest in replenishing your clarity, reinforcing your values, and simply recharging your capacity for focused attention. When you emerge from a period of quality solitude, you are not withdrawing from the world, you are returning to it fortified. Your presence is fuller, your listening is deeper, and your responses are more considered because you are operating from a place of abundance, not scarcity. Integrating this into a modern life might seem challenging, but it can be beautifully simple. It doesn't require a week-long silent retreat, though those can be powerful. It can begin with a 10-minute daily ritual of reflection. This could be sitting with a cup of tea in a quiet corner, free from your phone, and simply reviewing your day. Ask yourself Stoic questions. Where did I act in alignment with my values? Where did I let external things disturb my peace? What is one thing within my control tomorrow? Another accessible practice is the mindful walk. Leave the headphones at home and take a 20-minute walk with no other goal than to be present with your surroundings and your own thoughts. Observe the sensation of your feet on the ground, the rhythm of your breath, and the sounds around you without judgment. This isn't about zoning out, it's about tuning in to yourself. These small, consistent acts of solitude create a bedrock of calm that you can stand upon when social situations become turbulent. How could carving out even a small pocket of solitude each day transform your presence and your influence? Imagine entering a stressful negotiation or a heated family discussion after having spent just 15 minutes in quiet reflection. You would approach that interaction not as an empty vessel needing to be filled with the approval of others, but as a centered, whole person capable of holding space for the conflict without being consumed by it. Your tactical stillness would be genuine because it would be supported by a deep well of inner quiet that you have consciously cultivated. The ability to be comfortably alone with your own thoughts is the foundation for being powerfully calm with others. It is in the silence we choose for ourselves that we discover the voice we truly wish to bring into the world. Are your intentions aligned with the influence you seek to have in the world? This question lies at the very heart of Stoic virtue, moving beyond mere technique into the realm of moral character. The Stoics believed that true influence could never be separated from ethical intent. It is not something you do to people, but something that flows through you when your motives are pure and directed toward the common good. Acting with purpose for a Stoic means ensuring that your primary goal is not self-aggrandizement, personal gain, or the manipulation of others, but rather to act in accordance with nature and reason for the benefit of the whole. This alignment between intention and action is the invisible engine of tactical stillness. When your inner motives are clear and virtuous, your external presence radiates a genuine authenticity that others can intuitively sense and trust. This trust is the bedrock of real, lasting influence because it is not built on persuasion or force, but on the unwavering integrity of your character. This idea is powerfully illustrated in the life and leadership of someone like Abraham Lincoln. Throughout the immense pressures of the Civil War, his actions were consistently guided by an intention that transcended personal ambition or even political victory, the preservation of the Union and the ethical principle of human liberty. His famous cabinet, the Team of Rivals, was a perfect example of this. A leader with impure intentions might have surrounded himself with sycophants and yes-men to consolidate his own power and ego. But Lincoln's intention was to gather the most brilliant minds available, regardless of their personal opinions of him, because his goal was the salvation of the nation, not the elevation of his own status. His rivals sensed this profound commitment to a cause greater than himself. They trusted that his decisions, even when they disagreed with them, were not born from pettiness or spite, but from a deeply held principle. This trust born of virtuous intention allowed him to wield immense influence over a group of fiercely independent and strong-willed individuals, guiding them through the most tumultuous period in American history. His tactical stillness was not an empty calm, but the outward manifestation of an inner purpose so clear and so virtuous that it commanded loyalty and inspired greatness in others. Contrast this with a modern-day example we've all likely encountered: a manager who implements a new policy under the guise of team building or increased efficiency, but whose true, unstated intention is to simply exert more control or cut costs to earn a personal bonus. Even if the manager never verbally admits this, the team will sense the dissonance. The words say one thing, but the energy, the subtext, and the eventual outcomes reveal the true selfish intention. This misalignment breeds cynicism, resistance, and silent sabotage. No amount of forced camaraderie or persuasive speech can generate genuine buy-in, because the foundation of trust is corrupted at its source. The influence attempted is weak and brittle, constantly requiring new applications of force to maintain. This is why the Stoics placed such emphasis on the constant examination of one's own motives. Epictetus urged his students to regularly ask, "For whose benefit am I about to do this?" It is a piercing question that cuts through self-deception and forces a moment of honest introspection before we act. This practice of intention checking is a critical component of tactical stillness. Before you enter a difficult conversation, before you make a decision, or even before you offer advice, pause to inquire into your own heart. Ask yourself, is my goal here to be proven right or to understand what is true? Am I seeking to win or to find a resolution that serves the common good? Am I speaking to elevate myself or to genuinely contribute? This internal audit creates a profound shift. When you act from a place of clarified, virtuous intention, your entire demeanor changes. The need to control the outcome diminishes because your primary satisfaction comes from having acted with integrity, not from achieving a specific result. This release of attachment paradoxically makes you more influential because you are no longer emanating the desperate energy of someone who needs something from others. Your stillness comes from a place of inner contentment with your own right action, and that authenticity is disarming and compelling. People feel safe around you because they sense you have no hidden agenda. They feel respected because your interactions are not transactional. So where in your own life might there be a misalignment between your stated goals and your underlying intentions? It often shows up in those subtle moments of frustration. You might become overly upset when a colleague doesn't adopt your idea, not because the idea was bad for the project, but because your deeper intention was to receive personal recognition. You might feel resentment when an act of kindness isn't reciprocated, because your intention was secretly to indebt the other person to you, not to simply offer kindness for its own sake. This week, choose one interaction, perhaps a planned meeting or a recurring conversation with a family member, and make your sole preparation the purification of your intention. Decide in advance that your goal is not to control but to understand, not to impress but to contribute, not to take but to offer. Then, observe how this shift internally affects the interaction externally. You may find that your words carry more weight precisely because you have released the need for them to do so, and that your silent presence, grounded in virtuous purpose, becomes your most powerful tool of all. Gratitude grounds us in what we have, not what we lack. This simple yet profound shift in perspective is more than just a feel-good exercise. In Stoicism, it is a disciplined practice for rewiring the mind away from reactive dissatisfaction and toward a resilient, unshakable contentment. Seneca explored this idea deeply in his letters, often reminding his friend Lucilius that true wealth is not found in acquiring more, but in wanting less and appreciating more of what is already present. He wrote that we should remember how precious even the most basic gifts of life are: our health, our senses, the ability to breathe freely, and that we often take these for granted while chasing after things we do not truly need. This practice of conscious appreciation is a direct antidote to the restless craving that fuels so much of our anxiety and impulsive behavior. By systematically turning our attention to the abundance that already exists in our lives, we starve the sense of scarcity that makes us reactive, jealous, and easily manipulated by external events. This grateful mindset is a cornerstone of tactical stillness because it fundamentally alters your center of gravity. When you operate from a place of perceived lack, you are perpetually off balance. You see others' successes as a threat to your own, minor inconveniences as major catastrophes, and every new desire as an urgent need that must be fulfilled. This scarcity mentality keeps you in a state of low-grade emergency, always ready to react, to lash out at a colleague who got the promotion you wanted, to sink into despair when a plan falls through, or to make desperate decisions from a place of fear. Gratitude acts as a counterweight to this. It anchors you in the reality of your present sufficiency. When you genuinely feel thankful for the roof over your head, the food on your table, or the support of a single good friend, the mind quietens. The frantic grasping for more relaxes its grip. From this place of inner fullness, you are no longer so easily thrown off course by the whims of fortune or the achievements of others. Your stillness comes from a deep-seated knowledge that you are already okay, which allows you to engage with the world from a position of strength and generosity rather than neediness and fear. Imagine a common scenario that triggers reactive envy. A close friend or colleague shares exciting news about a major professional achievement, a promotion, a new award, a successful venture. The automatic, scarcity-driven response is to compare their highlight to your own behind-the-scenes struggles. This comparison breeds a sense of lack within yourself, which can manifest as a hollow, forced congratulations, a subtle withdrawal from the relationship, or even passive-aggressive comments that subtly diminish their success. This reaction, born from a focus on what you lack, damages the relationship and reinforces your own feelings of inadequacy. Now, replay that scenario with a foundation of Stoic gratitude. Before you even respond, you consciously bring to mind a few specific things you are genuinely grateful for in your own career and life, perhaps a recent small win, a skill you've mastered, or the simple security of a steady income. This doesn't negate your own ambitions, but it grounds them in appreciation rather than desperation. From this centered place, you can truly celebrate your colleagues' success without making it a commentary on your own journey. Your congratulations are warm and authentic. Your stillness and genuine happiness for them not only preserve but actually strengthen the relationship, demonstrating a confidence and grace that people deeply admire and are drawn to. Your influence grows because you are seen as secure, generous, and free from the pettiness of comparison. To weave this practice into the fabric of your daily life is to build a bulwark against reactivity. It doesn't require grand gestures, only consistent, mindful attention. Seneca suggested that we end each day by reflecting on what went well, what we enjoyed, and what we are thankful for. This could be as simple as the taste of a good meal, a moment of connection with a stranger, or the comfort of a warm bed. The act of writing down 3 specific things you are grateful for each day forces the mind to scan the past 24 hours for evidence of good, training it over time to notice abundance rather than absence. This isn't about ignoring life's very real challenges or injustices. It is about refusing to let them monopolize your entire field of vision. It is a conscious choice to also see the good, the helpful, and the beautiful that coexist with the difficult. This balanced perspective is the source of profound calm. When you make this a daily ritual, you are not just listing positive things, you are actively strengthening the neural pathways that lead to contentment and weakening those that lead to envy and dissatisfaction. You are essentially performing maintenance on your own mind, ensuring it is equipped for stillness. Remembering death clarifies life. This ancient Stoic practice, known as Memento Mori, is not a morbid fixation on the end, but a powerful tool to sharpen your focus on the quality of your existence right now. Marcus Aurelius returned to this theme again and again in his private writings, urging himself to remember that life is fleeting and that even the most powerful emperor is merely a brief visitor in the grand scheme of time. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't a thought designed to induce fear, but to instill a profound sense of urgency and purpose. It is the ultimate filter for triviality, a mental sieve that separates the essential from the inconsequential, allowing you to channel your energy and influence into what genuinely matters. When you consciously hold the awareness of your own impermanence, the daily irritations and petty conflicts that so often consume our mental energy simply lose their power. The frustration of a long line, the annoyance of a negative comment online, the urge to win a minor argument, these things begin to feel absurdly small when viewed against the backdrop of your finite time. This perspective doesn't make you passive, it makes you strategic. It frees you from the shackles of ego and social posturing, allowing you to bypass meaningless battles and conserve your influence for the moments and missions that truly align with your core values. Your stillness in the face of minor provocations becomes effortless, not because you are indifferent, but because you have a much larger measuring stick for what is worth your attention and emotional investment. You become less concerned with being right in the moment and more dedicated to being effective over a lifetime. This practice fosters a unique and potent form of influence because it is rooted in authenticity and purpose. When you are no longer performing for an audience or building a persona designed to impress others, your actions carry a different weight. People are drawn to those who seem to operate from a deeper place, who are not easily ruffled by the superficial dramas of the day. Your focus shifts from influencing others for personal gain to influencing situations toward outcomes that have lasting meaning. A leader guided by Memento Mori might forego a flashy, short-term victory that boosts their ego in favor of a patient, long-term strategy that truly benefits their team or company. A parent might choose a calm conversation over a heated argument, understanding that the quality of the relationship matters more than winning a dispute about chores. This clarity of purpose, born from the awareness of life's brevity, makes your actions more consistent, your presence more grounded, and your silent example more compelling to those around you. Consider how this shift in perspective can transform your approach to a common source of anxiety, public speaking or presenting an idea. The fear often stems from a place of ego, a worry about being judged, appearing foolish, or not being perceived as smart or competent. Now apply the lens of Memento Mori. In the grand and final scheme of your life, will this single presentation truly define you? Is the opinion of every person in this room more important than the value of the idea you are sharing? Remembering your mortality shrinks the imagined stakes of the moment. It allows you to step back from the fear of judgment and reconnect with your genuine intention, to contribute a useful idea, to share a piece of knowledge, to connect with your audience on a human level. This realization can drain the anxiety from the situation, replacing it with a calm, purposeful focus. Your delivery becomes less about performance and more about authentic communication, a change that audiences instantly recognize and respond to with greater trust and engagement. How could integrating this simple practice alter your own path? Take a moment to truly reflect on it. If you were to hold the awareness that your time is limited and precious, what one petty grievance would you immediately let go of? What difficult but important conversation would you finally have the courage to initiate? What passion project would you stop putting off until someday? Memento Mori is not a call to reckless action, but to purposeful action. It is the quiet voice that asks if the hill you're preparing to die on is actually worth a single minute of your irreplaceable life. By regularly contemplating the end, we are gifted with the clarity to live a better beginning and middle, influencing our world not through noisy force, but through the potent, focused, and purposeful application of a life lived wide awake. To influence others, first accept that perfection is an illusion. This Stoic recognition of universal human fallibility is not an excuse for mediocrity, but a realistic foundation for building resilient and compassionate influence in an imperfect world. Epictetus, who understood hardship intimately, offered profound guidance on this front. He reminded his students not to be surprised or disturbed when others act foolishly or unfairly, for to expect people to never err is to misunderstand human nature itself. He famously said, "When you are going about any action, remind yourself what nature the action is. If you are going to bathe, picture to yourself the things which usually happen in the bath. Some people splash the water, some push, some use abusive language, and others steal." His point was not to become cynical, but to preemptively accept that people will be people, flawed, messy, and often operating from their own limited perspectives. When you release the expectation of perfect behavior from others, you disarm countless potential frustrations before they ever arise. This acceptance is the soil in which tactical stillness grows, allowing you to respond to errors and shortcomings with clarity rather than react with exasperation. This principle applies equally, and perhaps more importantly, to how we view ourselves. The relentless pursuit of personal perfection is a hidden source of immense anxiety and self-sabotage. It creates a constant internal critic that magnifies every small mistake into a catastrophic failure of character. Stoicism invites us to replace this harsh self-judgment with a commitment to progressive virtue. The goal is not to never fail, but to fail well, to learn from errors, to make amends where possible, and to continue moving forward with renewed understanding. When you embrace your own fallibility, you transform your relationship with failure. A missed deadline or a poorly chosen word ceases to be a damning indictment of your worth and becomes simply data, a useful lesson on what to adjust for next time. This internal shift is profoundly liberating. It frees up the mental energy previously spent on self-flagellation and redirects it toward constructive action. Your influence is enhanced because you operate from a place of self-acceptance rather than self-rejection, which allows you to engage with others from a position of genuine strength and stability, not a fragile ego desperate to prove its worth. Consider the dynamics of a modern team environment where the pressure to perform is high and mistakes can feel costly. A leader who secretly demands perfection from both themselves and their team creates an atmosphere of walking on eggshells. Team members afraid of making an error and facing judgment become risk-averse. They hide small problems until they become big ones. They avoid proposing innovative ideas for fear they might be wrong, and they waste energy covering their tracks instead of focusing on solutions. The leader's own frustration with inevitable mistakes leaks out in subtle criticisms, sighs of disappointment, or micromanagement, further eroding trust and psychological safety. Now imagine a leader who has internalized the Stoic embrace of imperfection. When a team member makes a significant error, perhaps missing a critical step that loses a client, the leader's response is radically different. There is no dramatic outburst. Instead, they employ tactical stillness, pausing to process the situation without panic. They then call a meeting focused not on blame, but on collective learning. They might say, "Okay, this happened. It's unfortunate, but it's now a fact. Let's figure out how our process failed to catch this and what we can build into the system to prevent it next time." What can we all learn from this? This approach acknowledges the imperfection without vilifying the individual. It demonstrates that the team's mission is more important than any single person's ego. This compassionate and effective engagement transforms a failure from a source of shame into a catalyst for improvement, fostering incredible loyalty and a culture where people are empowered to take ownership and innovate without fear. This practice extends far beyond the office and into the fabric of our personal relationships. How often do we hold our partners, our children, or our friends to unconscious contracts of perfection? We expect them to always remember what we told them, to never be in a bad mood, to anticipate our needs without us having to communicate them. We set these impossible standards and then feel a simmering resentment when they inevitably fall short. Embracing imperfection means consciously choosing to see the whole person, with their beautiful strengths and their very human flaws, and deciding that the relationship is more valuable than the fantasy of perfection. It means forgiving the forgotten anniversary not as a slight against you, but as a simple oversight by a busy and distracted mind. It means responding to a child's messy room not with anger, but with patient guidance, understanding that developing organizational skills is a process. This shift doesn't mean you accept outright disrespect or neglect. It means you address issues from a place of calm understanding rather than furious disappointment. Your influence within your relationships deepens because people feel accepted for who they are, not constantly judged for who they are not. They feel safe to be their authentic, imperfect selves around you, which is the deepest foundation of trust and connection. Where in your own life might an unconscious demand for perfection be creating unnecessary friction and frustration? Is it in your personal projects where you procrastinate starting because you're afraid the result won't match the ideal in your head? Is it with a colleague whose working style grates on you because it isn't exactly your own? Or is it with yourself, where a single unproductive hour can derail your entire sense of self-worth for a day? The invitation here is to practice a gentle audit of your expectations. The next time you feel that familiar surge of irritation at a mistake, your own or someone else's, pause and ask a simple Stoic question. Is it reasonable to expect a human being to never do this? The answer will almost always be no. In that space, you can choose a different path. You can choose the stillness of acceptance over the turbulence of judgment. And in doing so, you open the door to a far more compassionate and effective way of engaging with our beautifully imperfect world. What happens in the space between thought and action? This tiny, almost imperceptible gap is where our freedom truly resides, and it is the very territory the Stoics sought to master through a practice they called proseuche, or attention. It is not the grand, sweeping gesture that defines our character, but the quality of our awareness in these fleeting moments before we engage with the world. A pause is the physical manifestation of this attention, a deliberate hesitation where we reclaim the reins from our automatic impulses and choose, with clarity, what happens next. This simple act is far from passive. It is an intensely active form of self-possession, a core Stoic tactic that transforms reactivity into response and chance into choice. In that brief silence, a cascade of potential outcomes is altered. Consider the instantaneous flare of anger after reading a provocative email. The thought arises, this is disrespectful. I need to set them straight immediately. Without a pause, the finger hits reply, and a torrent of defensive, accusatory words is unleashed, damaging a professional relationship and often creating a problem far larger than the original issue. Now imagine inserting just a 5-second pause. You close your eyes, you take one deep breath. In that sliver of stillness, the Stoic questions can surface. Is this interpretation absolutely true? Will my reaction serve my long-term goals or just my immediate ego? Is this within my control? This momentary suspension creates space for a more virtuous and effective response to emerge, perhaps a request for a clarifying call or a diplomatically worded request for more information. The pause prevented a misunderstanding from escalating into a conflict, all because you chose not to be a slave to your first impulse. The practical application of this is limitless, woven into the fabric of our daily interactions. Before responding to a challenging question in a meeting, instead of rushing to fill the silence with the first idea that comes to mind, allow yourself a 3-second pause. This silence conveys thoughtfulness and confidence, making your eventual words carry more weight. During a disagreement with your partner, when you feel the urge to interrupt and defend your position, practice the pause. Simply listen, hold the space, and let their words fully land before you formulate your reply. This act of restraint is a profound gift of respect that completely changes the tone of the conversation. Even before starting your car after a frustrating day at work, a pause to take 3 conscious breaths can mean the difference between a calm drive home and taking your irritation out on other drivers. These are not monumental changes, but they are the very threads that, when woven together, create a tapestry of a more deliberate and influential life. This week, make it your Stoic exercise to hunt for these opportunities to pause. Choose one specific trigger, perhaps the moment you feel your body tense up during a debate, or the instant you see a notification from a particular person. When you feel that trigger, let it be your cue. Stop, breathe, create that space. You are not doing nothing. You are doing the most important thing. You are choosing who you will be in that situation. You are moving from being a character in someone else's play to becoming the author of your own. true influence comes from aligning with the natural order of things. The Stoics, starting with Zeno, saw the entire universe as a single, interconnected system governed by a divine, rational principle they called the logos, or cosmic reason. To live in accordance with nature wasn't about moving to the wilderness. It was about understanding your unique role within this vast, intelligent system and acting in harmony with it. It means using your human gift of reason to discern what is true and right, and then aligning your actions with that understanding, rather than fighting against the fundamental grain of reality. This philosophical alignment is the ultimate source of effortless impact, because when you stop resisting the current of what is and instead learn to navigate it with skill, you conserve immense energy and move with a grace that others find both compelling and mystifying. This principle is powerfully illustrated by the way water interacts with stone. Water doesn't attack a boulder, blocking its path with fury or frustration. It doesn't waste energy raging against the obstacle's existence. It simply persists, flowing around it, seeping through its cracks and over countless seasons, wearing it down through gentle, relentless persistence. The water's power isn't in its force, but in its flawless alignment with its own nature and the nature of the stone. It works with the laws of physics and geology, not against them. This is the essence of Stoic influence. It's not about bludgeoning others into agreement or stubbornly forcing a square peg into a round hole. It's about possessing the wisdom to understand the landscape of a situation, the personalities involved, the timing, the unspoken dynamics, and then applying your effort in a way that moves with that landscape, not against it. Your actions become like water, adaptable, patient, and ultimately transformative. Think about a common struggle in the workplace, trying to implement a new process or cultural change. The leader who operates out of alignment with nature might issue a top-down mandate demanding immediate compliance. They are resisting the natural human tendencies to be skeptical of change, to need time to adjust, and to desire a sense of ownership. This approach creates friction, silent resistance, and often outright rebellion. The leader is exhausting themselves, pushing against the immovable stone of human nature. Now consider the leader who aligns with nature. They understand that lasting change requires cultivation, not command. They start by explaining the why behind the change, appealing to their team's shared reason. They pilot the new process with a small, willing group, allowing success to build momentum naturally. They listen to feedback and adapt the plan, working with the current of their team's concerns rather than against it. This leader is like water, patiently and persistently shaping the environment. Their influence is profound because it feels natural and collaborative, not forced. They achieve their goal not by overpowering resistance, but by understanding its source and redirecting its energy. This concept invites a moment of honest self-reflection. Where in your own life are you currently trying to swim against the tide? Are you in a constant battle of wills with a family member, trying to force them to be someone they are not? Are you clinging white-knuckled to a 5-year plan that life itself is clearly signaling needs to be adjusted? Are you exhausting yourself resisting a circumstance, a job loss, a health issue, a global event that, however unpleasant, is simply the current reality? This resistance is the source of our greatest suffering and our most futile efforts. The Stoic invitation is to first practice acceptance, to look clearly at the rock in the river and acknowledge its presence without judgment. Then, from that place of clear-eyed acceptance, you can begin to apply your reason. You can ask, given this reality, what is the most virtuous and effective way forward? How can I flow around this obstacle? How can I use its very presence to shape a new path? This shift from resistance to alignment is where we trade struggle for strategy and frustration for flow. It is how we stop wasting our influence on pointless battles and start applying it to meaningful progress. Know thyself, this ancient maxim, inscribed at the temple of Apollo at Delphi, was embraced by the Stoics as the very foundation of all wisdom and the starting point for any meaningful influence. It is the deliberate and often challenging practice of turning your gaze inward to observe the workings of your own mind with the same objective curiosity you might apply to studying a complex machine. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this inward turn in his private writings, which were never intended for publication. His meditations are a stunning record of a powerful man engaged in a constant, gentle dialogue with himself, questioning his motives, checking his judgments, and reminding himself of his core principles. He wrote not to impress an audience, but to understand himself. This rigorous self-examination is the engine room of tactical stillness, because you cannot hope to master your external presence if you remain a stranger to the internal currents that drive it. This practice of self-awareness is like installing a permanent observer within your own consciousness. Its job is to quietly notice your automatic patterns without immediate judgment. It notices the specific type of criticism that makes your stomach clench and your mind leap to defensiveness. It catches the subtle rush of satisfaction you feel when you receive a compliment that feeds your ego. It observes the habitual thought that arises when you're kept waiting. This is a disrespectful waste of my time. These are not your faults, they are your data. Each observed reaction is a priceless clue about your hidden operating system, the beliefs, fears, and desires that run beneath the surface of your awareness and dictate your automatic responses to the world. Self-awareness brings this programming into the light, and in that light, you can finally begin to choose which patterns serve your goals and which ones sabotage your ability to remain still and influential under pressure. Consider the pattern of a leader who feels a compulsive need to fill every silence in a meeting. On the surface, it looks like leadership taking charge, providing direction. But with self-awareness, that leader might uncover the deeper pattern driving it. A deep-seated fear of being perceived as unprepared or uninformed if they don't immediately have an answer. This fear triggers anxiety, and the impulsive talking is merely a reaction to soothe that anxiety. This pattern, however, hinders tactical stillness. It prevents the leader from leveraging the power of a pause, from allowing others to contribute, and from responding with the considered wisdom that only comes after reflection. Once this pattern is seen and understood, it loses its power. The leader can now choose differently. They can feel the familiar anxiety rise when a silence descends, acknowledge it with their new self-awareness, and then consciously decide to hold the space open for 3 more seconds. In that choice, they transform from a prisoner of their pattern into the author of their influence. The most powerful and time-tested tool for cultivating this level of self-awareness is the simple practice of Stoic journaling. This isn't about chronicling your day's events, it's about dissecting your day's reactions. Marcus Aurelius's meditations were his journal. You can create your own. Each evening, take just 5 to 10 minutes to pose a few deliberate questions to yourself on paper. Where today did I act in accordance with my character? Where did I fall short? What triggered a reaction of anger or anxiety in me today? And what was the underlying judgment that caused that reaction? When did I choose stillness over noise, and what was the outcome? The act of writing forces a clarity that thinking alone rarely achieves. It slows down the frantic pace of your mind and allows you to examine your impulses from a slight distance. Over time, this practice builds an intricate map of your inner world, revealing the predictable trails your thoughts take and giving you the power to forge new, more effective pathways. So what is the one habit, if changed, would most significantly enhance your presence? Perhaps it is the habit of mentally rehearsing your response while someone else is still speaking, which prevents you from truly listening. Maybe it's the habit of immediately reaching for your phone the moment you feel a pang of boredom or discomfort, training your brain to fear quiet and avoid introspection. Or it could be the subtle habit of framing every unexpected problem as a personal affront, a narrative that instantly triggers a reactive and defensive posture. Identify just one. Don't attempt to overhaul your entire personality overnight. The Stoic path is one of incremental, consistent progress. Choose that single habit and bring the full force of your self-awareness to it this week. Simply notice it each time it occurs. Observe the trigger, the feeling, and the outcome without judgment. The very act of noticing it with compassionate curiosity begins to loosen its grip, creating the tiny gap of freedom where your tactical stillness can finally take root and grow. Humility is not weakness, it is strength under control. This Stoic virtue represents a profound inner confidence that has no need for external validation or displays of superiority. Seneca frequently championed the value of modesty, advising that we should always be ready to learn from others, regardless of their status, because the pursuit of wisdom requires acknowledging the vastness of what we do not yet understand. He saw arrogance not as a sign of strength, but as a brittle facade that isolates us from the truth and from genuine connection. True humility, from this perspective, is the rational acceptance of our own limitations, an understanding that we are works in progress, perpetually capable of growth and in need of correction. This mindset is a powerful catalyst for tactical stillness because it dissolves the need to be right, to have the last word, or to defend a fragile ego. When you are humble, you can afford to be still. You can listen, observe, and absorb without feeling that your worth is being threatened by every contrary opinion or piece of feedback. This disarming quality of humility is what makes it such a potent tool for influence. When you approach a situation without the armor of arrogance, you signal to others that you are not a threat. You create psychological safety, inviting openness and collaboration instead of resistance and defensiveness. Think about a common dynamic in a workplace meeting. A leader who presents themselves as the ultimate authority, who speaks with absolute certainty and dismisses alternative viewpoints, may command obedience through fear, but they will never inspire genuine buy-in or unlock the full potential of their team. Their influence is shallow and brittle, entirely dependent on their position of power. Now imagine a different leader, one grounded in Stoic humility. They might begin a discussion by saying, "This is my current thinking based on the data I have, but I know I have blind spots. I'm eager to hear your perspectives and challenge my assumptions." This simple admission of fallibility is incredibly disarming. It tells the team that their leader is secure enough to be wrong and values their contributions enough to risk being corrected. This vulnerability, which is actually a display of strength, builds immense trust and loyalty. People are far more likely to commit to a course of action they help to shape, and they are more willing to follow a leader they believe sees them as partners rather than subordinates. A powerful historical illustration of this principle can be seen in the leadership of Abraham Lincoln during his presidency. He famously assembled a cabinet of his fiercest political rivals, men who had openly scorned him and believed themselves to be his intellectual superiors. A less secure leader would have seen these figures as threats to be neutralized. Lincoln, however, possessed a deep and stoic humility. He was less concerned with his own ego than with saving the Union, and he recognized that achieving that monumental goal required the best minds available, even if those minds belonged to people who disliked him. He listened to their often harsh criticism, considered their conflicting advice with an open mind, and integrated their perspectives into his own decisions. His humility did not manifest as weakness, it was the source of his strategic strength. By willingly exposing his own thinking to rigorous challenge, he made better decisions. By valuing competence over flattery, he earned the respect of his most skeptical colleagues. His influence grew not in spite of his humility, but directly because of it. He disarmed resistance through a genuine willingness to learn from anyone, transforming potential enemies into indispensable allies. This practice extends far beyond the halls of power and into our everyday interactions. Consider how you handle feedback, whether from a performance review, a comment from a partner, or even constructive criticism from a friend. The default, ego-driven reaction is to become defensive, to explain away the feedback, or to counter-criticize. This reaction, though natural, shuts down communication and ensures you learn nothing. Now, imagine applying Stoic humility. When receiving feedback, your first internal move is to assume it might contain a kernel of truth, however poorly delivered. You listen fully without interrupting. You might even ask clarifying questions to ensure you understand the perspective completely. You thank the person for their input, not because you necessarily agree with it all, but because you value the opportunity to see yourself more clearly. This response completely transforms the dynamic. The other person feels heard and respected, and you walk away with valuable data about how your actions are perceived, data you can use to adjust and improve. Your stillness in the face of criticism becomes a demonstration of strength that often compels the critic to become more reasonable and constructive in return. How might a dose of intentional humility alter the course of your next difficult interaction? Is there a conversation you've been avoiding because you're afraid of being proven wrong or having to admit a mistake? Perhaps there's a relationship strained by your silent insistence on having your way, on being perceived as the one who is right. The Stoic invitation is to experiment with a different approach. The next time you feel that familiar surge of defensiveness rising, see if you can pause and consciously choose humility. It might sound like saying, "You know, I hadn't considered it from that angle. Help me understand," or "I think I misjudged that situation, I'm sorry." This is not about conceding every point or becoming a pushover. It is about prioritizing understanding and connection over winning a temporary advantage. It is about recognizing that the strongest influence is often built not on being the loudest voice in the room, but on being the most secure voice, the one that isn't afraid to be quiet, to listen, and to acknowledge that there is always more to learn. Can you remain calm when everything around you is not? This is the ultimate test of Stoic equanimity, a state of unshakable mental and emotional composure that allows you to navigate external turbulence without being swept away by it. The philosopher Epictetus, who was born into slavery and faced immense hardship, placed this ideal at the very center of his teachings. He constantly reminded his students that our peace does not come from arranging the world to our liking, but from mastering our internal world regardless of how the external one behaves. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the essence of equanimity. It is the conscious cultivation of an inner citadel, a fortress of calm that stands firm against the sieges of chaos, allowing you to think clearly, act virtuously, and exert a steadying influence when it is needed most. This tactical stillness becomes your most potent asset precisely when circumstances are at their worst. In moments of collective panic or confusion, a single calm presence can act as a psychological anchor for everyone else. Chaos is contagious, but so is composure. When you refuse to be pulled into the vortex of anxiety and reaction, you create a gravitational field of rationality around you. People who are spinning out of control will naturally begin to orient themselves toward your stillness, mirroring your calm and becoming more receptive to clear direction. Your equanimity does not mean you are indifferent to the problem. It signals that you are fully engaged with it from a place of strength and clarity, not fear. This is what separates a reactive participant from an influential leader in a crisis: the ability to hold the space for reason when emotion is demanding to take the wheel. Consider the intense pressure faced by a crisis manager in the immediate aftermath of a corporate disaster, like a major data breach or a public relations scandal. The news is breaking, social media is erupting with outrage, executives are panicking, and the legal team is advising extreme caution. A leader without equanimity would likely be paralyzed by the fear of making a wrong move or would react impulsively, perhaps issuing a defensive statement that only pours fuel on the fire. Now imagine a leader who has practiced Stoic equanimity. They feel the same initial jolt of adrenaline, the same awareness of the high stakes, but they have trained for this moment internally. They take a deliberate pause to ground themselves, acknowledging the storm without being consumed by it. Their response is measured and purposeful. They gather their team and speak with a calm, steady voice. This is a serious situation, and we will address it with transparency and integrity. Our first priority is our customers. Let's focus on the facts, our immediate next steps, and how we can communicate clearly. This demeanor is not passive, it is a powerful active force. It cuts through the panic in the room, providing a clear focal point for collective action. The leader's equanimity influences the entire organizational response, turning a potential spiral into a coordinated effort and ultimately preserving trust and credibility in the long run. This principle is just as vital in the personal chaos that life inevitably brings. It could be a sudden health diagnosis, a family emergency, or a financial setback. In these moments, our loved ones are looking to us for cues on how to respond. If we dissolve into fear and despair, we amplify the chaos for everyone involved. But if we can find a way to access our inner equanimity, to be fully present with the pain of the situation without being obliterated by it, we become a source of strength and stability. We can make necessary decisions, offer comfort, and handle practical logistics with a clear head. Our stillness in the storm tells those around us that while the situation is difficult, it is manageable, and that we will navigate it together without losing our minds or our hearts. Take a moment to close your eyes and visualize a current or recent source of chaos in your own life. It might be a conflict at work, a stressful family dynamic, or a personal uncertainty. Now imagine yourself moving through that situation with genuine equanimity. What does that version of you look like? How are you breathing? What is the tone of your voice? What are you choosing to focus on that is within your control? This mental rehearsal is not about denying the difficulty of the circumstance. It is about strengthening the neural pathways that lead to calm, so that when the pressure mounts, that version of you is more accessible. Your ability to remain steady amidst the chaos is not a gift given to a select few. It is a skill built through daily practice in smaller moments, a muscle strengthened each time you choose a breath over a reaction, a pause over a panic. Your breath is an anchor in the storm of distraction. While the ancient Stoics may not have explicitly outlined breathing exercises as we know them today, their entire philosophy was built upon the foundational practice of attention and presence, of which the breath is the most immediate and accessible tool. Marcus Aurelius himself spoke of the power of retreating into one's own mind to find a citadel of peace, and what is more central to that inner sanctuary than the very rhythm of your own breathing? This isn't about complex meditation techniques. It's about recognizing that your breath is a direct tether to the present moment, a physiological lever you can pull at any time to shift your state from one of reactive chaos to one of composed readiness. It is the most portable and instant form of tactical stillness you possess, always available, requiring no special equipment or environment to center your mind and body, enabling you to exert a far clearer and more deliberate influence on the situations you face. The mechanism is both simple and profound. When you feel a surge of anxiety, anger, or fear, your sympathetic nervous system takes over, triggering a cascade of physiological changes. Your heart rate accelerates, your muscles tense, and your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. This is your body preparing for a fight or flight response, a state that is utterly incompatible with clear, strategic thinking. By consciously taking control of your breath by slowing it down, deepening it, and focusing your entire attention on the sensation of the air moving in and out of your body, you send a powerful counter signal directly to your nervous system. You activate the parasympathetic response, which is responsible for rest and digestion. Your heart rate slows, your blood pressure decreases, and your muscles begin to relax. This isn't just a psychological trick, it is a biological intervention. You are quite literally using your body to calm your mind, creating the internal quiet necessary to observe your impressions without immediately assenting to them, to widen that critical gap between stimulus and response. From this place of physiological calm, your judgment is no longer clouded by adrenaline. You can assess the situation with objectivity, access your stored knowledge and principles, and choose a response that aligns with your virtues and your goals, rather than simply reacting from a place of primal impulse. Integrating this practice into the flow of your daily life can transform moments of potential conflict into opportunities for influential presence. Consider the power of a simple breath pause before you walk into an important conversation. Instead of rushing in with your thoughts already racing ahead, you stop just outside the door. You plant your feet firmly on the ground, you close your eyes for just 3 seconds, and you take one slow, deep breath, focusing only on the feeling of your lungs filling and emptying. This tiny ritual does 2 things simultaneously. First, it centers you, pulling you out of the narrative in your head about what might happen, and anchoring you firmly in the reality of the present moment. Second, it sets a deliberate tone for the interaction that follows. You enter the room not in a state of anticipatory anxiety, but from a place of grounded calm. This shift is palpable. The other person will sense your composed energy, and it will naturally influence the dynamic of the entire conversation, often making it more collaborative and less confrontational before a single word is even spoken. The true test of this tool comes not in calm moments, but in the heat of reactivity. The next time you feel that familiar flash of irritation from a curt email, or the tightening in your chest before delivering difficult news, I invite you to make that your cue. Instead of immediately reaching for the keyboard or steeling yourself for a fight, place your hand on your stomach, feel it. Now, inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, feeling your abdomen expand. Hold that breath for a count of 4, then exhale even more slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. Repeat this just 2 or 3 times. In the space of those 20 seconds, the entire emotional charge of the moment will often change. The urge to fire off a defensive reply will diminish, replaced by a calmer curiosity about what might have prompted the message. The anxiety about a difficult conversation will soften into a focused resolve to handle it with clarity and compassion. This is tactical stillness in its most immediate and powerful form, a direct bodily reclaiming of your own agency. It is in these small, conscious breaths that we build the mental muscle for the Stoic ideal of a life lived in accordance with reason, one anchored breath at a time. Ego is the enemy of effective influence. It is the invisible wall we build between ourselves and others, a barrier constructed from our need to be seen as important, correct, or superior. Marcus Aurelius, a man who commanded the greatest empire on earth, constantly reminded himself of the emptiness of external validation. He wrote in his private meditations, "How quickly all things disappear, in the universe the bodies themselves, but in time the remembrance of them." He understood that the praise of others and even our own reputation are as fleeting as smoke, dissolving into nothingness with the passage of time. To base your sense of worth and your strategy for influence on such transient things is to build your house on shifting sand. The Stoic practice of letting go of ego is not about cultivating low self-esteem. It is about trading a fragile, external self-image for a solid, internal moral core. It is the conscious decision to value your integrity and your purpose more highly than your pride. This release of ego is the final, crucial ingredient for mastering tactical stillness. When you are attached to being right, your mind is never truly still. It is constantly rehearsing arguments, defending positions, and seeking evidence to support your own superiority. This internal noise makes it impossible to listen deeply or observe objectively. You are so focused on crafting your next brilliant point that you miss the subtle cues and opportunities unfolding right in front of you. Your need to win the moment sabotages your ability to win the long game. Tactical stillness, by contrast, requires a mind that is free to engage with reality as it is, not as your ego wishes it to be. It demands that you set aside the personal need for recognition in service of a larger, more important objective. Your influence then flows not from the force of your personality, but from the clarity of your perception and the virtue of your actions. Consider a high-stakes negotiation between two companies. The representative for company A is deeply ego-invested in the deal. They see it as a personal triumph, a chance to prove their prowess and score a win against their counterpart. Throughout the discussion, they interrupt, they dismiss concerns, and they tenaciously cling to their initial terms, interpreting any compromise as a personal defeat. Their need to be seen as the victor is palpable, and it creates tension and resistance. Now, observe the representative for Company B, who has practiced letting go of ego. Their goal is not a personal victory, but the best possible outcome for their company. They listen more than they speak. They do not feel threatened when their ideas are challenged. They see it as a path to a better solution. At a critical juncture, they consciously concede a minor point on pricing that they could have argued over for hours. This concession is not a weakness. It is a strategic move that demonstrates good faith and builds trust. It makes the other side more willing to concede on a much larger point regarding the long-term service agreement. By letting go of the need to be right on the small point, they win the far more valuable prize. Their stillness and lack of ego-driven reaction created the space for a collaborative breakthrough that a more rigid, prideful approach would have never allowed. This dynamic plays out in our personal lives with equal force. How many arguments with a partner spiral into days of silence because neither person can let go of their need to be apologized to first? How many potential friendships never blossom because an initial slight or disagreement was taken as a personal insult that must be avenged? The ego interprets every difference of opinion as a threat, and its only solution is to escalate. Letting go asks a different question. Is preserving this relationship more important than proving my point? Is finding a solution more valuable than being recognized as the one who had the solution? When you can answer yes, you access a different kind of power. You can be the first to apologize, not because you were wrong, but because you value the peace. You can acknowledge the valid part of someone's criticism, even if it was delivered poorly, because you care more about growth than being seen as perfect. This ability to bend without breaking is the hallmark of a resilient and influential character. So where is your own ego most likely to hijack your better judgment? Is it in that recurring debate with a colleague where you know you tend to dig in your heels, not because the point is crucial, but because you don't like to lose an argument? Is it in your reluctance to ask for help on a project because you are supposed to be the expert who has all the answers? Or is it in the quiet resentment you feel when someone else receives credit for a success you contributed to? Identify that tender spot, that specific situation where your sense of self-importance feels most threatened. The next time you feel that familiar flare of defensiveness or that urge to set the record straight, see if you can pause and make a different choice. Choose to ask a question instead of stating a fact. Choose to credit someone else's idea generously. Choose to prioritize the outcome over your own role in it. In that conscious release, you may just discover that the greatest influence often comes not from building yourself up, but from having the quiet confidence to let go. What would you do if you were not afraid? This question cuts through the noise of our daily anxieties and gets to the very heart of a crucial Stoic distinction: the difference between action born from reckless impulse and action born from courageous conviction. The Stoics did not see courage as the absence of fear, but as the quality that allows us to feel fear and yet choose to act in accordance with what is right and necessary. Seneca placed courage among the 4 cardinal virtues, arguing that it was essential for living a truly virtuous life at all. He wrote that a person without courage cannot practice justice because they will fail to defend the innocent. They cannot practice temperance because they will be too afraid to deny themselves fleeting pleasures, and they cannot practice wisdom because they will be too scared to face difficult truths. In the Stoic framework, courage is the virtue that unlocks all the others. It is the bridge that allows the inner stillness we've been cultivating to translate into powerful, effective, and virtuous action in the world. This is the critical synthesis. Tactical stillness is not an end in itself. It is not about becoming so calm that you simply withdraw from life's challenges. The stillness is the preparation, courage is the execution. It is what allows you to step out from that calm center and into the fray, not with the chaotic energy of aggression, but with the steady force of deep conviction. When you act from this place, your influence is profoundly different. Aggression seeks to dominate and control others. It is an external force applied to a situation. Conviction, by contrast, is an internal compass that guides your own actions with such clarity and certainty that it naturally commands respect and often inspires others to follow. Your courage becomes a silent signal that you believe in something greater than your own comfort or safety, and that is a message people are instinctively drawn to. We can find a powerful illustration of this quiet courage in the life and actions of Rosa Parks. Her historic refusal to give up her bus seat was not a sudden, angry outburst. It was a profound and deliberate act of courage that emerged from a place of deep personal conviction and dignity, a form of tactical stillness under immense pressure. She was not loud or aggressive, she was simply, steadfastly unmovable. In that moment, she channeled her fear into a breathtakingly courageous act of non-violent resistance. Her stillness was not passive, it was the ultimate active refusal to comply with an unjust system. She influenced the course of history not by shouting down her oppressors, but by the quiet, unwavering power of her conviction. Her courage provided a focal point that galvanized a community and then a nation, demonstrating that the most powerful actions are often those taken from a place of calm, resolute certainty, not from flustered anger or panic. This virtue is just as accessible and necessary in the far smaller theaters of our own lives. It takes courage to have that difficult conversation with a family member you've been avoiding, not because you are unafraid of the conflict, but because you value the relationship more than your temporary comfort. It takes courage to voice a dissenting opinion in a meeting where everyone else seems to agree on a path you believe is unethical or unwise, not to be contrarian, but because your commitment to integrity is stronger than your fear of social disapproval. It takes courage to pivot in your career, to start a new venture, or to admit you were wrong. All of these actions require you to feel the fear and move forward anyway, guided by the inner compass of your principles rather than the shifting winds of external opinion. So what is the one fear that currently holds the most power over your choices and your potential for influence? Is it the fear of what other people might think of you, a fear that keeps you from sharing your creative work or your innovative ideas? Is it the fear of financial instability, which keeps you locked in an unfulfilling job and prevents you from pursuing a true calling? Or is it a more personal fear, the fear of vulnerability, perhaps, that keeps you from building deeper connections with others because you are afraid of being hurt? Identify that single, specific fear. Now, imagine just for a moment what the very next step would be if that fear did not have the final vote. You don't have to envision the entire grand plan, just the first small, courageous action. Perhaps it's sending an email to inquire about a new opportunity. Maybe it's scheduling a coffee with someone you admire to ask for advice. It could be as simple as honestly admitting a mistake to a colleague or offering a genuine compliment to someone you've always felt competitive with. Courage is built in these small, daily repetitions. Each time you choose to act from your conviction rather than react from your fear, you strengthen that muscle. You prove to yourself that you can be afraid and still be effective, that you can feel the tremor in your hand and still reach for the door. And with each act of courage, your capacity for true, conviction-based influence expands, allowing you to shape your world not through force, but through the quiet, unshakable power of a heart that has learned to act in spite of its fear. Throughout our exploration, we've journeyed through the core pillars of this practice, the power of presence, which allows us to engage fully without the need to react, the profound strength of cognitive detachment, which frees us to act with excellence while releasing our grip on specific outcomes, the disciplined choice of intentional silence, which creates space for understanding and strategic response, and the resilient foundation of inner calm, which allows us to be the steady point in any storm. These are not separate tricks, but interconnected parts of a single, powerful way of being. Together, they form the art of tactical stillness, a way of moving through the world with a quiet authority that shapes events not through force, but through the undeniable quality of your composure. This is the ultimate fulfillment of the opening idea, that the most influential thing you can do is sometimes quite deliberately nothing at all, nothing, that is, except to hold a space of unwavering clarity and purpose. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who knew more than most about navigating a world he could not control, offered a timeless piece of wisdom that encapsulates this entire journey. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This is the essence of what we've discussed. Your freedom and your influence are not found in controlling external events or other people, but in the relentless mastery of your own judgments, your reactions, and your inner world. This self-mastery is what grants you the unshakable stillness that can de-escalate conflict, inspire trust, and guide situations toward better outcomes without a raised voice or a manipulative word. It is the quietest form of power and ultimately the most enduring. Now, the real work begins not in understanding these ideas, but in applying them. I encourage you to choose just one principle from this video, just one, and commit to practicing it with intention this week. It might be the simple act of inserting a deliberate pause before you respond to a challenging email. It could be the practice of mentally rehearsing a potential obstacle to rob it of its power to surprise you. Or perhaps it's the commitment to listen deeply in your next conversation without any agenda to reply. Do not try to overhaul your entire life at once. The Stoic path is walked one deliberate, mindful step at a time. Find one point of leverage and apply it consistently. Observe the subtle shift it creates in your interactions and your own sense of peace. This is a conversation, not a lecture. I would love to hear about your experiences as you try this out. Which principle did you choose to focus on, and what did you discover? What challenges did you face? Sharing your insights in the comments below not only helps you solidify your own learning, but can inspire and guide others on this same path. If you found this exploration valuable and want to continue cultivating a more resilient and purposeful life, consider subscribing to the channel for more practical wisdom from Stoicism and other philosophical traditions. Thank you for your time and your attention. Go forth and